Is fat bad for you? Yesterday we talked about fruit and if fruit was had too much sugar and wasn't good for you. So today I wanted to talk to you about fat. Because of course, you know, you're, okay, fat makes you fat and that's a bad thing, and it's not. Why do you need fat? Every membrane of your cells has fat to protect it. You make hormones from fat. Your brain has a high percentage of fat. So fat is very protective. Now, it's really, when we're talking about diet, we're talking about quality, and we're talking about quantity as well. But quantity and quality are very, very key. So what's too much fat? Percentage-wise, there's a certain amount. Now, what about quality? Saturated fat is problematic if you're consuming it in any great amount, because saturated fat absolutely does lead to heart disease, increased risk of heart disease, increased risk of stroke. I know you will find a plethora of information online that says saturated fat is totally fine. It's not. I'm just telling you, it's not. There's way too much evidence to show that saturated fat will raise bad cholesterol, increase your risk of not just obesity, but heart disease and stroke. And since heart disease is the #1 disease killing most of us, I think we should pay attention to that. Now, that's not to say that fat's bad. It's not bad at all. We're talking about monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats, things like olive oil, avocados, nuts and seeds. What else is in my polyunsaturated? Chia and flax and walnuts and cold water fish like salmon. There's a lot of beautiful fats in the monounsaturated and polyunsaturated arena that are very helpful for you. Fat is great because it's very satiating. You know, when you eat some nuts and seeds, or you eat a piece of salmon, or you have some avocado, it's very satisfying. Unfortunately, when people go way low fat, unless they're really minding their quality, they tend to replace it with simple carbohydrates, which is why things like fat-free Oreos, a lot of those products got very popular when people were afraid to eat fat, and some people still are, and that's all they're looking for is low fat on the label. So first of all, you've got a highly processed food, getting back to the Oreos for a moment, tons of sugar, not gonna do you any good at all. So you have to replace calories with something. You don't just go super low fat and not eat anything else. You have to replace it. So you want to replace it sensibly and also keep a decent amount of fat in your diet so you are satiated. Christopher Gardner from Stanford University did a great study called Diet Fits, F-I-T-S. The first time I heard it, I was like, you're going into a fit because you hate your diet? No, but it actually fits, as in the right size for you. So he did a low fat and a low carb group. They were randomized over the course of a year, keeping calories and protein stable. And it was very interesting because the group started with very low carb and a very low fat group, and they were given a lot of good dietary advice about healthy fats and healthy carbs and an overall healthy diet. And then over the course of the year, they were told to alter their diet to a level where they felt it fit, okay? Hence the Diet Fits, meaning, you know, I can do this. Like, this is something I can do the rest of my life, not, you know, looking at your watch saying, is this, you know, hell almost over because I can't stand it, I'm starving. They didn't want that. They wanted to get them to this place where they're like, I like this, I'm satisfied, I can do this, I feel good. And what they found was very interesting, that there was no difference between the groups. So keeping calories stable and keeping protein stable, there was absolutely no difference between the low-fat group and the low-carb group when it came to a variety of metrics, but especially they were looking at weight loss, and there was no substantive difference between the two groups. And what they found was that the very low fat increased their fat to a level that was kind of what you typically see in a healthy diet. Same thing with the low carb. They increased their carbohydrates in a non-refined, way. They were encouraged to do that. And so when the diet fit and they felt comfortable and they felt they could sustain it, They had veered away from super low fat, veered away from super low carb, keeping, again, protein calories stable, but they also did well. They felt like they had a new relationship with food. They understood different quality of food, and so it was very educational. But this whole idea of, okay, what is it going to be? Is it going to be the low fat or the low carb that really wins the day and shows the most weight loss? And they were dead even, pretty much. So there was no substantive difference. But what they did come to was that a diet that had whole foods, had a nice increased level of vegetables, really reduced sugar intake, and really reduced refined carbohydrate intake and saturated fat intake. These were the protocols that led to the success, led to good weight loss. And this group, over the course of the year, lost a lot of weight. Not dangerously, but a lot of weight was lost across this large group of people. And so it was successful from the weight loss and how they felt and what they learned about food. But as far as the low fat versus low carb, there was no difference, which is pretty interesting. So getting back to our topic, don't be afraid of fat. Question, okay, thank you. I appreciate you as well. When it comes to fat, it's very, very critical that we understand quality. So it's not saying you can't go out and have a steak with a bunch of saturated fat, but you have to look at overall, like, what are you consuming generally in your diet? So the saturated fat is something you want to reduce, but you want to have good mono and polyunsaturated fats in your diet, and those are very healthful. If you're wanting to lose some weight, you know, which way do you prefer to do it? Are you consuming sugar and refined carbs, or are you not? And you go, okay, like recently I decided that my macadamia nut amount in my diet had increased a little too much. So I cut it down a little bit and I noticed a difference. So these are things you can play with within a healthy diet, but not just, I'm going to go super low fat because then I'm going to lose a ton of weight. That's not what you'll find, and you won't be able to sustain it. And you're going to replace those calories, and what are you going to replace them with? And that's what's really key. So the moral of the story here is that there isn't a one-size-fits-all diet. That is for sure. But there really is a one-size generally good and bad, and that's what I just reviewed. You want whole foods, you want lots of good vegetables, you don't want sugar, you don't want refined carbs and ultra-processed food, and you do want healthy fats, predominantly poly and monounsaturated fats. So enjoy those. If you have any questions, definitely let me know. Any other topics you want to hear, I would love to hear those as well. If you enjoyed the content, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so more people can hear this information.